Hey guys, welcome back. It is another episode of the Book Marketing Show. This is the show where my partner Jonny Andrews and I talk about book marketing. Two words that don't always go together, even though they should. Now, today on the program, we are going to talk specifically about using a book to help build your platform in the nonfiction space. Whether you are a speaker, a subject matter expert, an executive, a public figure, using a book is a great way to start building the foundation of the platform that you can build a $1 million business on if you do it right. So we're going to talk about that today. Jonny Andrews, of course, my partner on the show, is the founder of author platform Rocket. And this is what he does for a living, guys. Over 17,000 authors, speakers, and entrepreneurs have enlisted Jonny's help in building the platform, selling books, and succeeding as an author, speaker, entrepreneur, and in a lot of other ways. So this is a great show. It's only about 30 minutes. Grab yourself a cup of coffee, get a notepad. You're going to want to take notes, and let's get to it. Again, today the topic is nonfiction, using that nonfiction book as a marketing tool to build your expertise and build your platform and make a lot of money. Hey guys, welcome back. The Book Marketing Show with that guy there. That's Jonny Andrews, and this guy here, Tim Knox. We are your resident experts, at least on this show, on the topic of writing, producing, and marketing the written work for various reasons. Jonny, how are you, buddy?
I'm lovely. It's been quite the day. I've been doing a lot of your stuff today, which would be editing.
Oh yeah? How fun is that?
It's terrible. It's not at all what I was looking for in life.
Well, you know, the thing with editing is I make a nice portion of my living editing other people's work. I hate to edit my own stuff. It's just a chore. You know, I just want to write it and everybody to love it. But geez, it doesn't really work like that most of the time. Hey, we got a great response to our first show that we released a few days ago. Book Marketing 101 is what we call that show. It's basically just an introduction to what we're going to do on this program on the channel. And we are literally going to talk about book marketing. Of course, Jonny is the man. He's the founder of author platform Rocket. You guys, Jesus, over 17,000 authors and another 10,000 or so speakers and entrepreneurs. Look to you, of all people, for expertise.
Like, I don't even, I don't know why.
Well, it's what's in here, buddy.
Sure.
That's it. So give us really a quick thumbnail. I'd like to hit this every show about what Author Platform Rocket is and exactly what you do.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, Author Platform Rocket is what I like to call a cradle to the grave kind of marketing solution for authors. You know, we have automated lead generation and whatnot, but our real bread and butter is sort of the agency program. And that's something that works with higher level fiction authors. And what we've now done, because the demand has been kind of ridiculous, is we're opening it up to nonfiction. So the folks, for example, that we're talking about today. So, for example, entrepreneurs who want to become authors, we have a whole program for that. And then authors who use the book as sort of the vehicle to drive sales into the rest of their business. We have a whole thing for that. So we have a consulting practice with that, along with something of like a little bit done for you ad. So it's this nice thing. It's this hybrid of consulting with a little bit of done for you, and kind of just the right amount of flavoring and whatnot.
It's one of the things I like about what you do, because you almost can any service they need, even if it's something small or something. Hell, you'll just develop a whole book for them and do the whole thing, and they just sit back. I think that's pretty cool. So, want to talk today about the nonfiction side of things, because that is you write nonfiction. I'm an old nonfiction writer, and I think that a lot of people they don't think about the business side of writing nonfiction and what the book literally means to their business. You know, when you're in nonfiction, typically you're doing the book as an augmentation or something of your marketing, but primarily it's to build that platform. So let's start from ground zero. Give me a definition of what is a platform. If you look at me and say, okay, you're going to want to write and speak and all this stuff, you've got to build that platform.
Well, in my opinion, and it's the one that I use.
It's the only one that counts on this show, buddy.
The platform is a group of people who know, like, and trust you that you can instantly reach out to for whatever reason, whether you have questions, whether you need, any kind of information. Like what I just did with my platform was I reached out to them and said, hey, what are your questions? We're moving into this part of the year. It's like, let's just kind of, just engage and do this stuff. And so that's setting me up with my material now to do a whole series of Facebook Live videos for these folks, 10 minutes and under. That's a platform. That's like, I hit send, I get results, period, end of story. Like I've built my entire business around the idea of this platform, and the most powerful version of the platform can technically be anywhere. You have a big Twitter following, big Instagram, those influencers that everyone talks about. I've done a lot with Instagram this year, and it has been, it's interesting. It can be used very effectively in different ways, but the reason I'm bringing this up, because Facebook used to be an amazing platform, and what it is now is an advertising platform. It is not a place that you can go to and like reliably say that this is something that you can't really look at Facebook anymore and say that this is going to be here for me in 20 minutes or whatever it is, unless you have like enough money to pay them to do that. That's literally it. It's a paid ad platform. So the one platform that matters is your email subscriber base, period. And you use something like Facebook as a vehicle to pull people out of that platform and then into yours. And, I, for example, built, over the course of 2 years, I'm actually doing like a whole case study behind how I did this, but it was, what was it, like $1,030,650 in sales with no website.
Wow.
You don't even need it. Like that's sort of the thing, is when you understand the concept of how to leverage a platform, and you have both social as well as kind of an advertising thing, you understand your customer. The rest of it's sort of moot. You don't need it.
Well, in my mind, I think the platform, I think it comes from the old days when the town crier would get on the platform and cry or do whatever town criers did.
Right.
But what it did, the platform was used to attract a crowd. Exactly. And what Seth Godin calls the tribe. You want to get that tribe of people who like, trust, they want to hear what you have to say. So when you do something like you just did, you put out hey, I'm going to go on Facebook Live in a few minutes, and tons of people show up, that tribe is attracted to your platform because they've heard your message before and they liked it and they want to come back. Whereas if they've heard your platform and they don't like it, they're not going to be in your tribe, and that's fine because those aren't the folks that you're trying to reach, right?
Exactly. Like you want to be polarizing. That's sort of a messaging thing. I mean, it's like, you look at how I present myself. It's, this is, hey, here it is. There's not a lot of arguing with it. It's like, this guy is exactly the dude he says he is. I really stress trying to be as thorough and authentic and communicate effectively and that kind of stuff. But other than that, it's like, I don't really wear a lot of suits. I don't, I'm not a big fan of cars, so I don't drive around in like Bentleys or anything like that. It's just, I'm just like a normal dude. And so,
well, see, and that's the thing. You are a normal dude. You are who you are. I've never seen you wear anything other than a V-neck.
No.
And but that's the thing, because on your platform what you're, and I want to talk about this aspect of it. What the audience wants to hear. I think the very first thing you've got to do before you even look at building a platform is, okay, who wants to hear, or who needs to hear the message that I have? Who is going to be my tribe? Don't you? Isn't that the first thing you got to think about, even before you start building that platform? Who you're going to deliver to?
Oh, absolutely. It's really interesting that you bring that up, because that's the book that I'm editing today. Oh. It's one of the two books in 2 days that I just did, because I'm honing that process and creating that framework and stuff like that. And that was a piece of it. Was, the first book, the working title obviously is called, before, what is it? Before, I can't even remember. The concept of basically it's for entrepreneurs who are already hitting that point of like, because what they realized is that they had this great idea for a business. Maybe they bought an info product and executed on it. And they now have, like, call it a coaching or consulting business and that kind of thing, but they haven't really thought about who this thing is for. And what they did was they went after the money. And I see this all so often in business, is they're going after the money of what this is without first asking, who is it that I'm even wanting to attract? And so the 3 questions that really lead into this, and for everybody listening, by the way, this is 100% applicable to book marketing, because before you write the book, and I do this process every time, is who are you? Who do you serve? How do you serve them? And then there's a skin and bones level on each one of those things. And the skin piece is like that surface level kind of thing, like some demographics. And then you get into the bones, which is like the really important stuff, which is the values, which is what do these people represent? You know, what do they believe in? That kind of thing. Because let's say, for example, you know, you've probably heard people, probably heard of these things called get rich quick schemes, right? Exactly.
I remember a few of those.
Exactly. Well, let's say, the typical, belief system ideology of somebody who's going to buy something like that is, ooh, if I get this, I'm going to buy this thing, and huge gorillas in soggy diapers with huge bags of money are going to drop out of the ceiling and I'm going to be rich overnight. And it's like, okay, I'm value-based. I'm completely against that because it's anti-work. It's anti-thought in my mind, that kind of stuff. It really doesn't make any sense. And so if that's the kind of person you want, absolutely, you would then create a value-based statement and stories that would illustrate values that those people are looking for. Like, you'd shoot a bunch of videos at the beach talking about how much money you made really quickly.
Or you could do videos in your backyard.
Exactly.
Hey, this is my backyard.
Right. And then you like rent cars and drive around looking all posh.
I'll give you a tour of my leased house. Come on in.
Exactly. Now, what's funny is, this is a little bit of a caveat, but if anybody looks up Little Dicky, the rapper, this guy.
That's a rapper?
Hold on here.
Okay.
This guy is the smartest fool I've ever seen, because what he did was he's like, oh, I want to do a rap video. What a rap video is about. He's like, they're about big houses, hot cars, pools, and hot chicks. And so he went through, like, I think it was like the celebrity area of LA, just ringing everybody's little fence gate thing and asking if he could shoot a rap video for like 20 minutes in their house. And the whole video is about him like doing this.
That's funny.
And then he went to the the people with the boats, and he did the same thing there. And it's like, hey, can you take us out for like 15 minutes? We'll shoot this video. It was awesome. It was super fun.
Well, all they can do is say no.
Exactly.
So, but you make a really good point though, because a lot of nonfiction authors, they don't really have a platform, or they don't have a message. I've seen this a lot. I did when I wrote my book, Everything I Know About Business. I was 12, but look at that little fat fella right there, Johnny.
Oh,
Isn't he
so
cute?
precious.
But when I wrote this, it was actually a compilation of business articles that I'd written in a syndicated newspaper column. But I knew who my audience was. They basically were startup entrepreneurs who were figuring out the process and going through it and that sort of thing. And so when I wrote and launched that book, gosh, it was 2005, I guess. Jeez, I was so much younger. I kind of knew who my audience was, and I knew what my message was, and that allowed me to build a platform that I did very well on. But a lot of folks will do what the right to market concept. They'll say, okay, I want to be a speaker and I want to build a platform. What's hot? What should I speak on?
Right.
And that's really, I'm a firm believer in finding an audience and coming up with something to serve them, as long as you're qualified to do so. You know what I mean? You've totally seen this. A lot of these experts, they couldn't expert their way out of a paper bag.
You mean like the Bitcoin stuff right now? Dude, come on now. That's crazy.
I was searching my couch the other day for Bitcoin. Didn't find a single one.
They don't tend to fall out of your pants. I think it's the electrical charge. They stick to your thighs.
Well, if let's look at this from an author or someone who has written a nonfiction book. They have identified the market. They do have a valid message, whether it's motivation or business or whatever. Once they've got that book written, Johnny, how do they go about integrating that book into the business model? How do they get it into the marketing machine to start building that platform and that tribe?
Totally. Well, just taking one quick step back from that, if they're still in the process of doing it, I'd highly recommend making sure that book serves only one audience. Let me give you a quick example.
Good point.
And even because because what it is, and was this Dan Kennedy or something, you have to enter the conversation in the prospect's mind. Mm-hmm. And so a good buddy of mine has been doing this for like 15, 16, maybe even 20 years or whatever it is. And he has, he was going to put out this book that was targeted at entrepreneurs who were ready to make a pivot because they were getting stressed out by the business and stuff. And that's his jam. That's where he operates.
It's a big market.
It is, exactly. It's so many dudes. Well, when we were talking about his book, it basically came down to, I'm like, well, who are you writing this for? And he said, well, two people really. And the first group was, what I just mentioned. It was that level of entrepreneurs. It's like, but it's also really good for people that are trying to exit corporate America looking to start their own business. I'm like, stop. No, listen, those are two diametrically opposed conversations. Now, a lot of the problems are going to be in the same box, but the entry level conversations are completely different. And the marketing that you have to do for those people is the messaging is totally different. And so what we had to do was pause him. He had written 100 pages of this thing. And what happened was, I'm like, okay, well, hold on a second. What is your goal with this book? What is the thing that you're going to use this book? Because now we can answer your question. What do you do with the book? The book is what I call a pass-through marketing. It's just basically pass-through marketing and that kind of thing, where people are supposed to go through the book. It's a touch point where you're going to get essentially what is a paid lead. They're going to read the book. Hopefully it's going to deliver enough value to them that they're willing to take the next step. And so the entire point of the book is to pre-frame whatever this main thing is. Now, I'm not sure what he's selling or what it costs or something like that. But for example, the sort of like the hybrid consulting and coaching stuff that we have, everything that we do is to frame that situation so that they want to then watch the next thing in the series, which is close to 3.5 hours of video training that takes them from the book and from these other different segments and then moves them through the sales process. And then the book is simply one entry point into that particular sales funnel. And that's what you have to understand, is that the book is a piece. It's an entry piece. It's a doorway into something bigger. And it's, the question I always ask is, well, are you hoping to make money with this thing? It's actually a trick question, because the answer is no, you're probably not. Because the act of selling something like this typically does not produce a positive ROI, but you don't need one because you're selling something that's typically way larger, and so you could keep something like Amazon ads. You can keep some pressure on that to keep that book elevated up there. Like we were talking about that yesterday. You could do a launch with the book. You do whatever it is, as long as you keep eyeballs on that book, because it's pre-selling and it's a piece. It's the entry point. It's a paid entry point to your marketing funnel. That's what the point of the book is. Yeah,
it's a marketing piece. And let's clarify, because there are different kinds of nonfiction books. There are the kind of nonfiction books written by experts and motivators and how-toers and that sort of thing. And those are primarily the ones that I think we're talking about as far as building a platform. And then you've got other, there are a lot of little niches inside of nonfiction, like the medical, the how I survived divorce, how I did this, how I did that. And while you can build platforms of expertise on those books, I think the big difference is, if you're writing, like your friend is writing a book that is going to be aimed at harried entrepreneurs, that is a completely different market than someone who is writing a book on how to recover from depression. So,
well, it's a different book, but at the same time, I think the distinction would be like that stuff versus someone writing memoirs. Both are technically nonfiction,
right?
But what you're talking about, what we're talking about here would be the stuff where you could build a business on the back end of this.
Yeah.
And so the divorce thing, that's a huge market right there. That's a massive thing with like tons of opportunity for information products, future books, speaking appearances. You could really do a lot with that market. There's a guy that I really like, man. I've had him on the show a couple of times. His name's Kamanzi Constable.
Yeah.
That guy. You know him.
Yep.
Word. He is awesome for how he literally just like slices into these major publications. And then he's leveraged that to, I think he sold over 100,000 copies of his first book.
Yeah, something like that.
Which was hybrid published, if I'm not mistaken. But then he went on to, he's like leasing his stuff to corporations and stuff, amazing stuff. But he did this exact same kind of thing. He looked, okay, what's the purpose of this book? And it was an entry point into a much larger funnel that he actually kind of made a little bit of a pivot with, because it was just about the entrepreneurial struggle. But he made a pivot with that to then use the social proof of what he did to build this massive career. So now he speaks internationally and all that stuff.
Yeah, and he's a great name. Tim Knox. How boring is that? But then you got him. Well, I think he's done like a number of those books that really struck a nerve. If you go back years and years, of course, the 7 Habits. You've got the Who Moved My Cheese. You've got the QBQ, Question Behind the Question, which John Miller has built into this ginormous platform. He's done pretty much the same thing. He started off with a book, and then he started speaking, and then he started training, and then he started training the trainers. And all he has to do now is sit back and just watch it, wheels turn. Same way with Gerber, Stephen Gerber, no, Michael Gerber, who did the E-Myth. I know Michael, and basically he's the James Patterson model. People now come to him with proposals and a fat check just to get him to endorse and put his name on the book. So
absolutely,
you can do amazing things building these platforms. So I think your main point there really is know your audience, write a book that people are going to connect to and want to hear more from, and then you can also translate that into funnel sales. Here's my book. I'm not necessarily making a ton of money on the book. It's more or less just a glorified calling card, if you will. But once you read this, you're probably going to want to hear more. And then that's when that hook is in there. You start to reel them in. Is that the way you see this?
Yeah. And what the objection that I typically get, I've had this conversation plenty of times, as you can imagine, but the objection I typically hear from folks at this point is like, well, if I tell them everything in the book, why do they need to buy my expensive service? And the reason why is because it's sort of like this. Well, there's two things going on. There's the perception of value, number one, that a book has a certain, it sort of sits on this rung on a ladder of value, and it's at the bottom. It's like, the first piece is, tell me how to do something, and that's what the book does. Then the other one, show me how to do something, which would be like a video course that is an immediate follow-up to that book. And then the other one is, kind of coach me on how to do something. And then the top one is do that thing for me.
Yeah.
And so you could move people to life. You could literally verbatim tell them the exact same thing that is in the book. And you can do that in a video, but they will buy the video and be happy they did because of the perception of value, and because it actually, for them or for most people, is more valuable because they can see it being done rather than just communicating through, the brain.
You know who is a master of this? Larry Winget, who, 6-time New York Times bestselling author, probably one of the top speakers in the country. He's on Fox TV, just really successful. And what Larry used to do was he would take his keynotes and transcribe them into a little book that he would actually sell at the back of the room. And it was almost verbatim what he had just said on stage, but he sold, I can't tell you how many tens of thousands of those things. And I asked him once, I said, well, do people ever get upset when they read the book and realize it's exactly what you said on stage? And he's like, well, hell no. Number one, they don't really remember everything I said on stage. And number two, it gives them a visual that backs up everything I just said. Mm-hmm. And Larry he's a master at getting people in that funnel. So it's kind of reusing that content to get them in. So I think one of the things, and I want your opinion on this, is before you start, and now I want to shift into the marketing, is you really have to ask yourself, why am I doing this, and who am I going to serve? Mm-hmm. Right. And then once you have those questions and you have the book written, now let's talk about moving into the marketing, because we talked about this on the last show. You need to start thinking about marketing even before you've written a word, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Marketing frames everything, including the deliverable, which is the book. It's just, that's kind of how it is. And so it's always interesting getting these sort of first-time authors from whatever genre or version, whatever, that pop in on a minutely basis, and they're like, "Well, my book's in editing. What do I do now?" And I'm like,
"Oops,
I don't know. I guess you got to figure out what you should have done before you did all that." But yeah, who are you? Who do you serve? How do you serve them? And start with the end in mind, which is, what is the thing that you ultimately want to sell? Use it, and how does the book become a piece of that? And so it doesn't. And like I said, you get into the skin and bones and the value-based things, and like, what are their values? How do they compare to your values? And when you're doing it that way, what it starts doing is, so if somebody values hard work, paid traffic over, say, affiliate marketing, if they value using a book as, some sort of authority getting thing and delivering high level value to their marketplace, well, what that does is it gives you a roadmap for your marketing now. So once you've established all this, obviously now you can write a book to this person based on these things. This tells you what stories you need to tell and what elements of what who you are that you should highlight to this person. Now, all of this has to be true. And one of the pushbacks I get when I talk about these things is, they're like, well, isn't that manipulative? And it's like, no, it's actually not at all manipulative, because you don't need to tell them a story about how you played sports in high school unless it's somehow relevant to the situation. you only tell the stories that are pertinent to the environment and the individuals. That's called framing, and you tell them that with the goal of overcoming their objections and overcoming their fears. Like a lot of people's fears, the fear of looking foolish. For example, I wrote this up today, which was, folks like us are, we've been at it for a while, so we're wired a little bit differently now. But most people are wired to really look at what their peer group says and what they think. And I have never in my life given a single crap about that, which is, it's just like, whatever, you kids go party. I'm going to hang out here and work for 18 hours.
Right.
But most people, they don't want to look foolish to their friends. And it's like, if they go and they spend a bunch of money on something and then they tell everybody and then somehow this thing doesn't work out, I told you so, that was a scam. And so that's a legit fear. You should bring that up and probably have some sort of story that frames up how what you're going to do is not that kind of thing. So you frame that all up with social proof and that sort of stuff. And it just needs to be completely and totally true.
Yeah. You know what? That social proof thing, it rings true with me. I was speaking at an internet marketing conference once, and this kid comes up to me and he goes, hey, I just wrote this book on how to make $1 million in 30 days. What do I do with it? And I'm like, did you make $1 million in 30 days? And I swear to God, Johnny, he goes, no, but I will once this book is published.
That's my favorite. Oh,
man. I'm like, you know what, kid, you're an optimistic son of a bitch, but I'm just not sure it's gonna work out. So I think it's really important. You do have all of this stuff in place, but from your point of view, should you pull the trigger and start marketing when you just have the book, or should you have the whole funnel in place before you do that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is kind of what we were talking about really quickly beforehand, to like what I did my own. I keep looking at the numbers so I can remember this thing. But it was, over $1 million in sales without a website. And so to answer the question, if you know your market and you know what they need and you can deliver it for them, you really don't need a big fancy thing. You don't need this like weaponized machine. You just need to be able to communicate mostly effectively. Like you can mess a lot of this up if you just really, I have built my life and my business around like less than 20% effectiveness. It's just, I don't know if I'm like capable of achieving any level of like perfection ever. And I'm okay with that because I don't need to. Right. Because what happens is when you know the answers to these questions, you intimately are aware of these, of how you and the market connect together, you can frame communication strategies in such a way that people are like, oh, this is great. Please take my money.
Yeah. When you did the $1 million without a website, were you, I would assume those were ads running people and directing them to a sales page?
No sales page.
What did you do?
I built lists. That's all I did was I built a platform and I spent time emailing and communicating with that platform. And then after a while, I'm like, well, it was interesting because, enough people saw what I was doing in my own business that I just wrote an email and said, hey, do you want me to do this for you? And then I literally put a link in the bottom of this huge email that was not edited at all. Kind of like my first book. It was really fun. And first of all, a group of authors, none of them complained about punctuation or spelling. Like, let me just let that be a lesson to everyone listening. Nobody cares. Yeah. The other thing, I just sent this message and, it was definitely a sequence because the first time I framed it, I don't know if I did it. I said, do you have any questions? Hit reply and let me know. And it became this living conversation with, at the time, there, might've been just like 4,000 or 5,000 people. It wasn't a really huge list because I was just, getting them back into it. Everything had been running passively for so long. And then I started to ramp up the leads. And I was using Facebook lead ads because you don't use those to get readers. You use those to get your business people. Mm-hmm. And so I was just using those things. So I'd be getting anywhere from, 20, 30, 40 leads a day, just what I call the slow cookers. And those things have been going forever. Yeah. And, so I sent an email and then they replied back and I said, oh, okay, let me adjust how I'm talking about this. And just kind of literally built this pretty large business over the course of 2 years. And the website went up in October of this year. Mm-hmm. So there was finally a thing that people could see. Yeah.
That's one thing. I want to do an entire show just on opt-in list building because a lot of authors don't really think about it because it's hard. I mean, it's, well, probably not to you, But to the
Oh, it's
average,
always hard. It's always
to the average Joe Bob author, just having to learn the Facebook ads and the opt-in process, and I think there's a lot of value there. So we got about 5 minutes left, and we can't really go in deep on any one topic because we're going to do a bunch of shows. But just quickly touch on the marketing strategies. I've got my nonfiction book. I should be looking at list building. What else should I be putting in my marketing basket? And we'll pull the trigger on the next show.
Well, for the sake of time and also just, brevity, and the fact that my computer's about to die, that would be awkward. How about I plug in really quick?
You know what? I think you did that last time.
I probably did.
I'm going to send you a Post-it note.
Yeah, exactly. Turn on. I think all in all, from what I have seen working right now, if you're going to do something, the goal should be to master like one specific tactic, because what you don't want to do, absolutely under no circumstances, we were talking about this like right before, is there's a lot of options for marketing. Don't try them all. Get one. And I recommend Facebook, because if you think about it, pretty much 80% to 90% of your clients are going to be there. It's kind of like why people will go exclusive to Amazon. That's like 70 to 80% of the publishing market. Fine. We'll go there. We'll do that.
Right.
So what I recommend is figure out how to layer social engagement, for example, like video marketing with what we're doing now. Like, how do you deliver value to your marketplace, and how do you engage them correctly so that when you go to make that sale, you've had multiple touch points. There was a program I used to do many years ago before I was married, with kids and, could travel and I had freedom. And we called it a workation. And it was a $10,000 program where what we would do is we would work with clients for a couple of weeks leading up to this big thing. We would go and rent this ridiculous mansion in Mexico. And then they would fly down and we'd be at this mansion and we would have, it was usually about a 5-day live intensive. And so, it was a huge, awesome experience. And I think everyone walked away with like an info product at the end of it. But the way that I sold, because it used to be sold live on stage during these events. And I'm like, I don't really want to do events right now. Like, I don't mind doing somebody else's event, but I'm going to prove to everybody that I can do this myself. And this universal tactic has been super effective. If you have a book, it absolutely counts, because the majority of people who were at the beginning of my funnel had come through a product that was $7. So it was no big deal. Like, it was a really cheapo product. Here I am going to try to sell them on a $10,000 trip.
That's a hell of an upsell, buddy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, this isn't just going to work on its own. So I'm like, well, what we have to do is multiple touch points. And that's the beauty of like Facebook Live, because Facebook Live did not exist back then.
Right.
So what I had to do was I recorded a bunch of videos. It was just, me in front of the computer and stuff like that, just talking to people. And I presented kind of like the overall idea of what this stuff was, and then asked their opinion. So I got that kind of engagement. And then second video was a little more content. And I sent them to a webinar where I then broke down, like, here's what we're going to do. And then I made them pay to apply to the program.
Yeah.
And then on the final webinar, that was where it was like, okay, now this is exactly what we're going to do, and broke down the whole thing. So it was multiple touch points throughout the entire thing. And if you can master that concept, and it's really easy inside of Facebook to be able to do these kinds of things. And if you're like saying, getting your book buyers, like if you sell it on your own site, for example, so you keep that buyer data, which is so vital, you can then have this army of verified buyers that you can then market directly to. And so those are going to be the people who are going to be the most valuable to you. And so if you can, that's the best subscriber base you can get.
Yeah, it's the power of the list. And you know what? Back in the old days, a lot of people would mistake a huge list for a targeted good list. You know what I mean? I knew a guy that, I've got 3 million opt-ins on a list. Yeah, well, what's the focus? What do you sell? Oh, well, all kinds of stuff. And then there's people like you who would have a list of 4,000 or 5,000 and do $1 million, where that guy's not doing anything. So I think when it comes to list building, it's not so much the volume, but it's the quality of lead that because if you've got someone on your opt-in list, let's be honest, it's a wasted space on the list because they're not going to buy anything from you. And that's the whole point, right? Is to make money from the list, not just to build the list.
Right. So when you do these kinds of things, you want to target because all your stuff is only going to go so far organically. Right. And so you're going to be running ads to these things. So when you do something like use a post as an ad, what you then want to do is really qualify who you're sending that to. So it's a good idea to go into that audience insights inside of Facebook and start looking for all these people. And what I've started doing now is qualifying them also by income level, because a lot of the stuff that we sell is going to be, somewhere in the ballpark of like $5,000 to $7,000 a month. Right. And that can get a little bit, that's hard for someone making $35,000 a year. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's why we have such an array of information, is to be able to help everybody. Mm-hmm. But our primary focus are on those higher level people that have an established business that we can really help. And so, we qualify when we run ads, we'll qualify it with, okay, here's the income, here's what they're interested in. It's the who do we serve? We know this. Right. So we go there and we get those people.
Okay. So God, the time goes so damn fast when I talk to you. It kind of sucks. We'll have to do it again. Really quickly though, let's just wrap this up. If you are a nonfiction author, the points to remember is, number one, why are you writing the book? Who are you writing the book for? Why are you writing the book? Is it to make money on a book? Is it to use it as a lead generator and build the platform? And once you get to that point, you then start looking at the various advertising platforms and ways to do that. And that would be the opt-in list, Facebook ads, all of which we're going to talk about in coming shows. Is that pretty much it in a nutshell?
Yeah, basically is just look at the book as the entry point, is the paid entry point to your sales funnel. Okay. And then what is the thing that you want to sell them that is of a higher value or whatever it is. So it could be the video course version. It could be coaching, consulting, whatever it is that you sell. The book is simply the gateway drug to that. So the book needs to be a pre-frame, meaning know your audience.
Yeah. And you understand what that book means to your overall business model.
Exactly.
Awesome. Jonny, good stuff, man. You're so much smarter than the average people I normally talk to.
I don't know about that. You know what it might be? The only thing is I've been willing to fall on my face enough times that I'm like, by the way, don't do it over there. There's spikes.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the ways you become an expert, is you exhaust all the possibilities and you screw them up, and then you invent the light bulb. So, hey, Jonny, if they want to know more about you and what's going on and the things that you can help them do, where do they need to go?
Just check us out at authorplatformrocket.com. And then right now I'm doing a bunch of Q&A stuff for live video in Facebook. So go to facebook.com and then authorplatformrocket/authorplatformrocket. And if you want, message the page, if you have a direct question or something like that, and there's a good chance that I'll probably be answering.
Cool. Yeah, you're always around.
I am. I try to be.
Every time I leave Jonny a message, I'm like, he'll get to it in about 3 days. And no, he's right back there. So, all right, we'll put links to all that below. Next time, you want to dive into Facebook ads a little deeper on the next show?
Absolutely. Yeah, I could talk about the hybrid marketing strategy that's really been working well.
All right, that's what's coming up next time we talk. So you guys hang in there, do good, go learn to market, and go check out Jonny's links and everything in the description down below. We'll see you next time.